It's November 30th. We are here at Algorand's Decipher conference, and I have the pleasure of interviewing the CEO of the Algorand Foundation, Staci Warden. Staci, great to have you here. I want to ask you, how did you get into blockchain? When did you first hear about it, and what drew you to the space? What drew you specifically to Algorand?
Okay, wow. All right, you come out strong on this podcast. So I think like yourself, have always come from a traditional finance background, and I was a couple of years at the NASDAQ, for example. I ran the microcap markets there. I was at the U.S. Treasury Department. I worked on developing countries. I ran the global public sector practice for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for JP Morgan. I was very focused on kind of Africa policy and bringing Africa at the public sector level more into the global financial sector. And I'm not going to say more jobs because I try not to act, older than I am. But all of these jobs, even though they were in traditional finance, they were always about, to some extent, financial inclusion, access to capital. And the more I was in that sector, the more I realized it's just not working for large swaths of the human population. Small businesses, even medium-sized businesses, even at the sovereign level for countries, and particularly for savers. And so I learned about Bitcoin in 2013. I was asked actually to teach a class on Bitcoin. And so, when you're going to teach a class, you really have to understand. I had to the press. It was a seminar for the press. And so I, locked myself in an apartment. I remember I was having my house renovated, so I was in this crappy little apartment for 4 or 5 days, just listening to podcasts, reading things, trying to figure it out. And the proof of work mechanism and the idea that it was one ledger that everybody had to keep kind of up to date, but without having to trust each other, was very compelling to me. And I saw then, although I don't think Bitcoin was really fit for purpose at the time, especially, I saw the potential to solve issues for financial inclusion and access to capital. And that's kind of how I fell in love with crypto more broadly. And
so you got the chance to become CEO of the Algorand Foundation. You want to quickly just describe for our viewers the difference between Algorand Inc. and Algorand Foundation, and how much younger than Algorand Inc. is the foundation?
I think they're about the same time. But Algorand Inc. builds the technology. So all the brainiacs are, not that we're not smart at the foundation, but all the brainiacs are at Algorand Inc. The architects, the cryptographer. Well, we have cryptographers too, actually, but the systems engineers. And so the protocol is built at Algorand Inc. in Boston. And we do everything that's fun. We run the community, we help the ecosystem, we do the tokenomics, we run the governance program, all of that about the ecosystem. The outreach is all, it's all the foundation.
Okay, so you come in as the CEO of Algorand Foundation January of this year?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, what were your goals? How do we define success? Because look, I feel like crypto market caps are very correlated to each other. So price goes up, price goes down. No one can really control that. What were your sort of objectives as you saw them? And how has this past year been?
Yeah, I mean, my objective was really the Algorand protocol that Silvio Macaulay built, devised and built, is the best layer 1 blockchain in crypto. And that was obvious to me. And that was one of the reasons, that was really the reason that I agreed to take on the role. I was on the board before. And so to me, the set of problems that we have as an ecosystem is really getting this protocol known and understood, getting support to the people that are building on it, the unbelievable developers. When I came, we had 2 DeFi protocols on Algorand. So, I think of my job basically in our job at the foundation, I should say, is in 2 big areas. One is growing, let's call it Planet Algorand, that ecosystem to be bigger and more liquid and stronger and more vibrant, and having good protocols on there, supporting those protocols, having a big and vibrant community. So that's kind of number 1. And number 2 is thinking about real world, I don't love that expression, but real world problems at scale, because Algorand can scale, unlike other layer 1s, I would say, most other layer 1s. And so how can we solve those problems around financial inclusion, supply chain kinds of things, all of those sorts of problems that Algorand can also be deployed for. So I think of them in, they're not exactly 100% different, but I think of those as the two big goals.
Mm-hmm. And
how's this year gone?
Yeah.
It's been a pretty terrible year for everybody in crypto. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but we have in Algorand just gotten so much done. I mean, it's incredible. On the protocol level, we went from 1,000 transactions per second to 6,000 transactions per second. Our latency was reduced from 4.5 seconds to 3.6 seconds. I mean, these are very hard problems to solve. We rolled out state proofs, which will enable a safe, trustless bridge, multi-chain world. Like, these are big things that they've gotten done at the protocol level. And in the community, we've just been growing like gangbusters. It's kind of like a Cambrian explosion of dApps being built on our NFT marketplaces. We've had 10x or 15x in every category. Lots of organizational things we've done at the foundation as well. So we've had, if you look inward, like a great year, but if you look outward, like terrible year for crypto.
Yeah, macro just is bad for all assets and for all crypto as well.
And and macro, even beyond that, macro, yeah.
Right. So the stuff that's being built on Algorand, is it people who do not work or work for Algorand at the Inc or the foundation? I guess those DApps, decentralized applications. So what do you view your role as sort of fostering that and bring people on board?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of different ways to look at it. So if you look at it from just the developer experience, right? We need to help developers with better tools for building on Algorand, get that educational experience, that kind of zero to hero that you have for developers. That's one thing. And I think the protocol is very good, but the user experience on the protocol has not been that good. So we have a CTO now super focused on fixing that. But if you think about it from a developer lens, there's that piece. Then there is bringing new developers into the ecosystem. So we were just rolling out all kinds of developer outreach and engagement, hackathons. We call them hack shacks, greenhouse hacks, all kinds of things to bring them in. And then as they get a bit their feet under them and they want to build, we've got an incubator strategy, so an accelerator program. So we run accelerators all over the world. So that's kind of the second stage for developers. And then those that come out of accelerators, they'll build on Algorand, and then we'll give them a different kind of support. And the support that we've given them so far has been primarily, I would say, monetary. But one of our goals for 2023, and which we will absolutely achieve, is to bring other kinds of in-kind support to the superstars on our ecosystem. So why not help them? Do they know they could be really, technically crazy great, but do they know how to write a business plan? Mm-hmm. Do they know how to manage their treasury? Do they understand how to, what HR policies could be, legal policies? So we want to maybe have some templates of stuff like that we can roll out to our ecosystem partners, help them maybe with, we have this rolled out in beta now, but we want to get it a lot more robust with hiring and a jobs board and all that kind of support. So we want to give a lot more comprehensive support at every stage of this journey.
So you have 900 applications, over 900 now on the Algorand mainnet. What are some of your favorites that you're paying a lot of attention to, as well as what sectors? How many are focused on NFTs? How many are focused on automated market makers, treasury management? Where do you see is like the biggest room for growth? Like, what are people most interested in?
Okay, I'm definitely not going to name my favorites because I'm not going to let you get me in trouble with my ecosystem. But we've got a lot of great dApps built in every area, right? So if you think about the DeFi applications, it's good to have a couple of at least you need sort of 2 to 3 to 4 really strong. And so we've got a few of those. So we have AlgoFi, Tiny Managed Trading, Folks Finance, Borrow Lend. So these are very important. And we've got a couple of different wallets now. ParaWallet, I would say, is maybe our main, but we also have the Algo wallet. And so it's important to have all of these kinds of pieces. C3 is a protocol that is being rolled out now. They're still, I think, on testnet, but that will allow you to use collateral across chain. So it's important to have all of these kinds of things in the finance space. And then in NFTs and Web3 and that kind of thing, it's very important for us to have a lot of different NFT platforms so that you can buy NFTs. And of course, you have to have good NFT projects. We have a number of NFT projects. We have so many projects on, because NFTs is a good example of why you would pick Algorand, because our gas fees, our transaction fees are so low that if you're selling things at a low price point, you can't spend a lot of money on gas fees, as we've seen this year, even with apes, right? I mean, it's just been sort of terrible for them with the Ethereum gas fees. So those, and then of course we have a whole slew of impact and inclusion, climate, carbon credit, remittance payments, disaster relief payments, which we'll talk about in my panel this afternoon. all of that kind of stuff around payments and smart payments is also a really important part of our ecosystem. So there's just a ton going on, and we are pretty focused, I would say, as a strategic direction on providing tools and frameworks and the right standards to let 1,000 flowers bloom rather than say, this is the one and this is, to build a solution ourselves. Our job at the foundation is to make the environment as good as possible for entrepreneurs to flourish rather than, doing it ourselves, I would say.
What would you say you're most proud of in 2022?
What am I most proud of in 2022? I came in, and it's a little scary to have a new CEO, and it's like, where did this woman come from? She was on the board, and like, who is she? And I think the one thing that I'm most proud of is I don't think everybody at the Algorand Foundation hates me. So
that's important.
Yeah,
to not hate the boss.
I think after 10 months, I think they understand where I'm coming from, and I adore them, of course, and I think we've found and are really starting to find our groove. I hired a bunch of new people. I'm very proud of how that onboarding process has gone, and I think we're all gelling and grooving together now, and just like foot on the gas pedal. Next year we'll get a lot of cool things done.
Yeah, what are your main goals for 2023?
For 2023, we need to, I think, the governance program in 2022, I would say, was broadly successful, but it wasn't perfect. And we need to push out more decision making to the community, particularly, I think, in the way that we spend grant money and the like. So I'd like to have more community engagement in governance, make that program stronger. Also, to find a way to support the DeFi ecosystem a bit more with liquidity, support the Web3 ecosystem as well. So at a kind of a systemic level. Then number two, and this is extremely important, we have got to just make sure that our marketing plans and our communication plans, I've got a new head of marketing, and so we really need to find our marketing voice, I would say, and understand where we can play and have a big impact, so people understand that we're there and the qualities of the chain and what we're up to. So I think those are sort of two or three of the and then I really do want to, we can scale unlike other protocols, so I want to find something. We've got a lot of pilots in different areas, and I think helping a couple of those really scale up is going to be an important objective for us next year for sure.
Yeah, so tell me more about the governance that governance goals that you launched in 2022. What went right? What are you still working on in 2023? And yeah, how centralized versus decentralized do you view something? I guess there's the traditional TradFi corporation where the board decides everything, and then there's like a DAO where, in theory, people vote on things and holders, and it's like democratic. Where do you see Algorand on that spectrum, and like, what are your goals to get there?
I think we are not unique in this. I mean, you're not really interested in being in crypto and Web3 unless you see yourself on a path to decentralization of some kind at the core protocol level, right? And so and we're not unique in this, as I say, are on a path to decentralization for sure. And what that looks like and how to do that safely is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. So I would say last year, we put in place a lot of the structure of how governance would work, how decision-making would work. We call it the XGov structure. What would give you certain rights for your participation in governance? The way that we are going to improve that governance program this year is in two ways. One is expanding the notion of work, because you have to do work to get governance rewards in Algorand. Expanding that notion of what counts as doing work. And that's easy to say, but sometimes quite technically difficult to do. So how to make sure that the rewards go to things that it might not be hard, it might be sort of not super easy to send them rewards, but even though it counts as doing work. Without going kind of in too much detail, that's a tricky issue. And then the second thing is expanding that set of things that the community should decide. So I walk around, we're virtual, but I sort of, virtually walk around the office and say, is this something that we could toss to the community? Is this something the community could decide? Because we're trying to put out those decisions to the community. So I might get in trouble if I say this, so I'm wondering if I should. But For example, why couldn't the community decide where Decipher is next year?
Mm-hmm.
So we might have a short list of locations, and we should let the community decide. Now, I say I might get in trouble because one location might be just so much cheaper than another. Then we'll have to pick that, and the community. I don't want anybody irritated with me. But those are kinds of things. And then, as I said, we are, and this is also common as a ecosystem matures, you move away from kind of just strict grants, and you start more of a venture kind of relationship. It's very much impact venture, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as protocols, they need sometimes larger ticket sizes, and so you participate with them throughout their life cycle. But we still will have a grant program, and so I would like this year to have it fully up and running, to have the grants that we give decided by the community. And so that's quite involved, right? Who applies? What is the process of making an application and demonstrating? XGovs will kind of upvote those, which ones look better, then how do we make the final decision? What is the role of the foundation to make sure that things kind of don't go off the rails,
mm-hmm.
but also leave the decision making to the community? So there's lots of issues around that, and just bringing more community involvement into the structuring of questions around governance. These are, we just hired a head of governance now for the first time. I kind of can't believe I didn't think about doing this a year ago, but so just make sure that community engagement around governance is much stronger, I would say, than it was in the past.
Mm. And earlier you said people involved in the Algorand community, they can do work to get rewards. I know there are other chains that if you're a validator to the network, you get rewarded, in the native currency. Just spoke to JJ. I believe Algorand does not do that. So what is the various sorts of work that people, if they want to get involved in the community, can get paid? In other words, how can people get Algorand and get paid other than just, spending their dollars to buy Algorand?
Right. So they don't get paid. They don't get paid for spending their dollars to buy Algorand now. But on this consensus mechanism, it's core to Silvio's initial vision. Although I will say he is open to, exploring this down the road, a change in that. But the initial vision is that this protocol is so easy. Consensus is just not a heavy lift. It's not like, I'm not throwing shade at Solana, where you really, to be, a validator, it's a heavy IT spend, in the realm of like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? You can be a validator on Algorand on your laptop. It has to be a nice laptop now that we're more performant, but a couple of years ago you could do it on a Raspberry Pi. So the idea is that it doesn't actually cost you that much, and therefore you should do this for a good citizenship. You are participating in this network. You are participating in this layer one. You should do your part to run consensus, a participation node. And then the second piece of that is he thought, if it's mercenary, if I have to pay you, then I'm only going to get mercenary capital. I only want the people that care enough about this network to do it without having to be paid. So that is the philosophical reason that we are built like that. But you need to take decisions about the network in order and become a governor, and that is how you now earn rewards. And so what does it mean to be a governor of the ecosystem, more than this very fundamental voting component? Because that is kind of all and will always be fundamental. Maybe you run a relay node. That's more expensive. So that might be something that we could increase into governance. You could be an NFT creator, have be a platform developer. Like there's lots of other things that we consider critical to the ongoing well-being of both the platform and the ecosystem. And we are exploring ways to find ways to support those through the governance reward system as well.
Yeah, tell me about the NFTs that were launched on Algorand. I guess you said earlier that it's very cheap to mint NFTs. On other protocols they could be quite expensive, especially if you're buying a $100 NFT. $60 of that is going to gas fees. That can be a problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, but do you see that as one of the biggest use cases in Algorand?
I think we have a number of reasonably unique features to this protocol. And one of them is very low transaction fees, sub-penny transaction fees. So it's 0.001 algo. So these are almost sub-penny transaction fees, right? They're not even noticeable, okay? So that's one thing, and that leads itself to NFTs. It leads itself to anything with a low price point. So remittance payments, for example, are another good. NFTs are good. So low price point kinds of things, you need low fees. And the other thing you need low fees for is very high volume transactions, right? So if you're going to do a lot of payments to a lot of different people, you can't just start racking up fees, right? So that's one thing. The second thing that's unique to us is we don't fork, and we use a system of Byzantine agreement. And so after these 3.6 seconds are up and another block is appended, it is final. You don't have to wait to see, which is the rump chain of the fork that then falls out and the transactions go back into the ether, and you have to kind of wait a bit to see what, which fork of the chain you're on. After the 3.6 seconds are over, you 100% are locked in. Total, complete finality. So you can imagine a lot of use cases where, like stable coins would be a good example, right? You can't have a stable coin on a layer one where there's a fork, even for a little bit of time, where you've got two claims for $1 on two different versions of your chain, even for a little bit, right? So that's another use case that Algorand, I think, is particularly well, suited for. And then, of course, just the speed also is and the transaction volume, right? So if you can do, Visa they brag that they can do more, but they do about 7,000 transactions per second. And Algorand, you can do 6,000 transactions per second. So it's getting very close to, the performant demands of traditional finance. Now, we are not competing with Visa in any markets right now or anything like that, but I hope if you ever invite me back to this podcast in the future, that I'll be able to give you some examples where we're really doing that kind of work.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was 2017, 2018, looking into the transactions per second of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And, Bitcoin's great, but it just cannot compete with that 7,000 of MasterCard or Visa.
Totally. So, yeah, totally. And you have to wait, 6-10-minute blocks on Bitcoin for your app to be absolutely sure that your transactions cannot be reversed. 6 blocks have to go by. That's an hour. It's not acceptable for kind of real world type industrial applications, I would say. Yeah.
Yesterday I interviewed chief economist Massimo Morini. He was telling me about a white paper or a study that was done with Algorand and the Bank of Italy. On my podcast, I cover central banks a lot.
Oh,
so that
cool.
caught my attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
What work does Algorand done to sort of foster relationships with central banks? Some in crypto think that central banking and crypto are natural enemies and will always be so. But what inroads, if any, are you making to sort of? I mean, because if cryptocurrency could become the official blockchain of a central bank, I mean, that would be game changing.
Yeah, it would be game changing. We are at the foundation. We are very focused on the public chain, and it's not clear to me that a central bank will ever. They will have a side chain that talks to the public chain. So as those side chains are developed, I think that's important. I think that's an unbelievably interesting use case, but it's not something that the foundation would focus on because we are very focused on the public chain. I think it would be a bit of a head scratcher for our community, for the foundation to be, working on kind of private chains or CBDCs or something like that.
Right. Okay. Thanks. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of partnerships this year: LimeWire, Napster, FIFA. What are you most excited about, and where did they fit within your strategic vision?
Yeah, so we are unlike other protocols, I would say, in that we don't really. There's maybe a couple of exceptions to this, more in the philanthropic area, but we don't do partnerships that don't use the blockchain, right? So, and again, this may be a couple of exceptions to that, especially in the past, but our partnerships are built on Algorand. So all of those are examples of that. So for the FIFA, for example, this was led by Algorand Inc., but they built, because there was a very strong technology component to it, they built the NFT marketplace for FIFA. And so that was the essence of that partnership. Napster is another good example, which has a kind of a heavy tech component, so led by Algorand Inc., to move Napster from a Web 2 play to a Web 3 play, right? So how to find the tokenomics around music listening and sharing and artists getting royalties and all of that. It's very interesting stuff. It gets complicated, but those are the kinds of things that we try to focus on. And so we're not so much the, putting the logo on a, on something. Just
Yeah. Earlier this month, the crypto world was shocked to learn that FTX did not have the funds. A centralized exchange fell. What were the learnings, do you think, from you? And what did you take away
from FTX?
Yeah.
I was shocked, like everybody, and I'm a little skeptical of people now saying, "Oh yeah, I knew all along." Because he was, to me, a very credible individual, and now it's sort of easy to go back and look at things, but no, I certainly didn't. I don't think anybody expected that he was using, customer deposits at the exchange to, if this is true, allegedly, to fund Alameda research and to lend to that protocol, collateralized by the exchange token, so that they could leverage up their trading positions. That is not something that I expected was happening, right? And so I think, lessons learned for investors is that's going to be kind of a red flag now. I mean, that would be regulated away in traditional finance, of course.
Yes.
But I think now you don't even maybe need the regulation, because the crypto community is just not going to let that happen anymore, right? Nobody is going to participate in an exchange that has with a trading firm owned by the same founder, right? This is not, so in a way, that's nothing about it is good, but in a way that's how you get smart, and that's how an industry grows up, right?
Mm-hmm. And do you think that a larger volume of trading will happen on decentralized exchanges? I know Algorand has a tiny man, but there are other centralized exchanges, and they do play a large role in trading currently. How do you see this going forward?
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think it's ironically very good for crypto. This is the grand irony of this whole thing, starting with Terra Luna, right, and Celsius and everything that kind of all the implications of Terra Luna. What did not perform as advertised were those centralized, we call them CeFi kind of institutions, the lending platforms. What performed exactly 100% as advertised were the crypto DEXs, right? Because they are over collateralized and positions are called by smart contract, right? So any lending to sort of Three Arrows Capital, say Aave, for example, or on Aave, that would be over collateralized, and when that collateral started tanking, boom, that smart contract is called, loans are called back, lenders are made whole, no questions asked, no creditor waterfalls, no bankruptcy court, no nothing, fine. Same thing here. So here meaning the FTX thing, right? So the great thing is that, and it's not well understood, and I fear that it's not well understood, is that crypto native exchanges, they perform, and borrow lend platforms performed as they said that they were going to perform. So this whole thing has been, to me, an absolute justification of crypto and DeFi.
The failings at FTX were because of people. The problems was that it was not on chain, and as a problem,
Exactly.
The whole point of an exchange is that it's not it's not on a ledger. You have someone in
Right.
between. So I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, but I feel like as a protocol that's trying to grow, the fact of the matter is that exchanges are so big that you of course have to work. You can't be DeFi only if you want to grow. You can, but it would you wouldn't grow as fast as you would. How do you navigate that? I know you recently announced, as of today or a day ago, that Binance is going to be there's going to be a flow of stablecoins. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, the Algo and USDCA will be listed on Binance, so that's a good thing, because those kinds of exchanges, especially the Binance, that's how you have to get fiat into the crypto ecosystem. So you need exchanges like that to go from fiat. The DEXs are like crypto to crypto mostly, right? So you have to kind of get in. So they will always be there. But I think your point and mine is that if you are in traditional finance, you're regulated, and so great, that's comforting. And in pure DeFi, it's over collateralization and smart contracts, so also great. But it's in this middle area, that's kind of crypto adjacent, but not regulated, where you can really find yourself into some trouble.
So some people still need to trade on a centralized exchange, but once they've made that transaction, there's some who say that once you made that transaction, put it on your cold storage, pull it on your wallet, don't keep assets on an exchange. Do you agree with that?
Not your keys, not your coins.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Well, that's a perfect way to end it. Staci, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah.
being here with you.